Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 10 of The Dance, entitled More About the Benjamins, because we're going to talk more about finances, money, and of course, those things specifically being related to marriage and the Christian household.
I was going to say you should explain that a little bit because I didn't get it at first. The Benjamins.
Yes, a reference to the somewhat, I've heard it before, phrase, all about the Benjamins.
Yeah.
Being Benjamin's $100 bills. So more about the Benjamins. Last week was part 1. So if you missed last week, go listen to last week. Not now, because now we're live. So stay here with us. But after it's over, go listen to last week. And as has been stated before, this podcast is available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever good podcasts are sold. So thank you for joining us. If you're joining us live, we're watching the comments. Please post questions, post comments, share the stream. You know the drill. We're going to jump right in, picking up where we left off on the topic of finances.
I was just thinking if we do a recap, a little recap.
Anything specific in mind? I'd rather not spend too much time on.
Just a recap would be we were talking about our early years, what finances looked like for us, our experience. I mean, we talked about Dave Ramsey a little bit, trying that out. About you wishing that you had been more hard charging as a young man, kind of thing. That's kind of the backdrop to what we're going to continue now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So jumping right in, although first I must observe that my wife looks lovely in her autumn attire. I told her so earlier, but I'm telling her so now in public. So topic number 1 is provident husbands. I teased on Twitter, just as I posted this just now, that this is one of my favorite things that I've learned from the ever controversial bearded wonder known as Brian Sauvé. And the podcast he does called Bright Hearth, he does with his wife, and they had an episode called Frugality is Not Enough. And I highly recommended episode. I'd recommend anybody go listen to that.
This is like, what, 3 years ago?
I don't think it was quite 3 years ago, but a while back.
Mm-hmm.
And an excellent podcast he did with his wife, but something that really stuck in my brain and was convicting to me was he talked about how, as a husband, it's not right to be asking your wife to make bricks without straw. It's not right to be giving her the responsibilities of a homemaker, but not equipping her to live that out fully. And as a Christian husband, we're called to be a faithful picture of Jesus Christ and of the way that Christ loves and cares for his church. And that certainly is applicable in this area, because we may simply ask, how does God care for his children? Is God a miserly, stingy provider who lets us eke by and make sure that we technically have bread and water on the table? Or is God generous and provident? Does he really care for our needs and our desires? That doesn't mean he gives us everything we want, but it does mean that he takes really good care of us. He is a loving father who delights to give good gifts to his children. Jesus talks about that. What man is there among you that your child would ask for a fish and you give him a serpent? I may be mixing up it should be bread and stone, fish and serpent. And Jesus's point was, even you being evil, I love Jesus's perspective on our self-esteem. Jesus says, if even you being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father give abundantly? Well, so husbands, if you're going to be a faithful picture of Christ in your marriage, it's not right to just expect your wife to figure it all out, and you don't really share any of the responsibility. You're not going to make anything happen. You're not going to provide generously for her. Early in our marriage, I specifically had a very frugality focused mindset. And that's not to say frugality is bad. Of course, we're called to be good stewards, which means you don't go out and buy things you can't afford and live foolishly.
Yeah. Ours kind of seemed more like penny pinching a little bit.
Well, I think for a lot of people, that's what frugality would be seen to mean, would be penny pinching. And
that's how I was just thinking of visual of how ours kind of played out.
Right. And so I was convicted of having that attitude specifically towards my wife, and just kind of expecting her to make it work on as little as possible, which isn't to say that those seasons might never be necessary, but to assume that that's normative or that's sufficient. It was just a really good convicting thing for me as a husband to think, okay, am I providing abundantly am I actually looking out for, like, I want her to be able to flourish. I want her to be able to be a homemaker and afford what she needs to give the kids a good homeschool education. And or am I setting it up to where, okay, she technically has everything she needs, but she's living in kind of a constant state of scraping and stress and trying to eke it out and trying to get by. And if I'm doing that, then I'm really missing a big opportunity to love my wife, to live with her in an understanding way, and be able to say, hey, yeah, you're my homemaker. You're called by God to make a home. And some of the practical ways that came out were in the homemaking sphere, where there'd be things where I would, say, well, you can't get that thing. You can't, upgrade the curtains or whatever, because we can't afford that. And having
it's not a need.
Right. It's not a need. And we're not financially well off.
We can technically go with curtains that are kind of shabby and aren't the right color to make the room look the best, but it's not a need.
Right. And so part of it was recalibrating my view of need, because as a man, I have a kind of a Spartan. We have the stuff that we need to survive, and so that I can keep working. And that's what we're here for, just work and survive. Right. And that is a very masculine way of looking at the world. And there's nothing wrong with it, unless you are then superimposing that on your wife, who is someone that God equipped with a feminine way of looking at the world, to be a homemaker, to be someone who makes life beautiful. That's her job. And so if you, as a husband, with your masculine Spartan view of the world, are not giving abundantly to her so that she can beautify and be creative and buy new curtains, and we're not talking about being foolish and spendthrifty and upgrading your house to being the Taj Mahal.
But $1,000 curtains.
Right, yeah. But if she doesn't have the stuff she needs to just wisely be a Proverb 31 woman and be able to be productive and beautify and do the feminine arts, that's part of your job in living with your wife in an understanding way and in providing for her, is to say, hey, what do you need? I want to give you what you need to be able to really fulfill your calling, do what you were made to do as a woman. I don't want you to be a Spartan masculine person. I'm fine with being that way myself. But if we don't understand that rightly, then being the head of the home and in a position of authority, you end up crimping her into this masculine Spartan attitude instead of letting her bloom like God made her to as a woman. And so that was something I was convicted of and had to reassess. So the title of that Bright Hearth episode, Frugality is Not Enough. The alternative is having a view more of, well, and we'll talk about the royal way later, but an attitude of abundance, not foolishness, not spendthriftiness, but we're not just scrimping.
Yeah.
I, as a man, need to go make more money. Maybe
that was one of the things that you were thinking was,
yeah,
okay, well, I'm making enough.
Right.
And you were saying, convicted, that just making enough is not enough.
Right. I'm making enough for us to eat. Okay. But am I making enough for my wife to do the woman thing, to beautify the home? Am I making enough for my children to flourish? Or am I just making enough for us all to survive? If I'm not making enough for us all to flourish, then I'm not really providing like I should be, or like God does. And this is not there. Again, there are seasons.
Yeah.
God provides, and sometimes you have to tighten your belt, and sometimes you lose your job, and sometimes that happens.
We have plenty of stories of when we were really poor and God provided down to the penny.
Right.
It was really neat. Did we share that one about when we had just moved out to your parents, when we were trying to save up? We did the bills. I calculated exactly how much we needed to pay all the bills. And then as soon as I had done the bills, we had just exactly whatever the amount was, minus like 62 cents. And we had this jar of pennies sitting on the desk. So we had plenty of stories where God did that in those times of penny pinching that we did have, where it was really necessary. We were poor. Yes, I would say we were poor at that time. And it wasn't through negligence on your part. That was something later, not necessarily negligence, but it was something you learned later.
Right. A mindset change.
Yeah, a mindset change. Because you weren't ever negligent.
Right. But there was a mindset change from me from, okay, we're making ends meet, and instead changing over to, wait a minute, I need to actually provide for my family. I need to go out there and get some. I need to leave an inheritance to my children. I need to get serious about provision for my wife, provision for my children, being an abundant, provident head of the house and not simply technically paying the bills. That was a big shift, big mindset shift for me. And it's a really good practical way to love your wife. It's a really good practical way to love your children, is to actually say, hey, I want to care for you, not just like make sure you don't starve. I want to actually care for you. I want you to be able to flourish and be productive as a woman and make the house a home. And so that was just a good perspective shift for me. Be an abundant, provident patriarch.
I just wanted to say, I know that was a really big blessing for me once you started doing that.
Yeah.
Just, I had a whole lot more freedom instead of, if I wanted to, I didn't have to save incrementally for something little like kitchen rugs, something like that. It became, oh, this is a need. This is a household need. And I can beautify our home, make us have a beautiful place to live, have company, and it not be just a little thing for me that I saved up incrementally for.
Right. And to some extent, this is just a simple matter of doing to others as you would have them doing to you. As a man, we never plugged in the laptop.
Uh-oh.
That would be a problem. As a man, for example, if for my work, if I need tools, we got to find the money. I don't care where the money comes from. I have to have my tools to get my work done. Do I have that same attitude towards the things that are tools for my wife's trade of homemaking? Where it's like, okay, I mean, it doesn't mean we're spending thousands of dollars on home decor, because she's a wise, godly woman. And of course, I wouldn't let her do that either, because we can't afford that. But at the same time, as a man, you can have this attitude of, well, unless it's a technical need, and that's not right. Don't do that to your wife. Recognize you should default to yes. If I possibly can, yeah, let's buy it. You want it? Let's buy it. You need it? Let's buy it. And do we need it is not simply a matter of, are we going to die without it? Yeah. But actually, like, do you need it to be able to make the house a home and take good care of the kids? Do the kids need new shoes? That doesn't mean that technically they don't still have shoes that they can put on their feet. They're just highly ventilated shoes.
Or they're ugly shoes and the girls don't have dress shoes.
Right. That's a great example, because as a man, I default to, well, you don't really need dress shoes, do you?
They've got tennis shoes.
Right.
So...
Right. And it's just let your wife do the beautifying that God designed her to do. And that is just an important perspective shift as husbands. Love your wife, live with her in an understanding way by empowering her to do what God called her to do in Titus 2.
I was thinking this part right here probably goes right next.
Yes. So the next step, so defaulting to, if possible, having an attitude of just defaulting to, you need it, get it. Right. That would be the default as a husband. I want to provide for my wife. I want to provide for you guys. Need it, get it. That's not, and well, we'll get into some of the other stuff, but that should be a default attitude.
I had an idea right here, like how to express this right here.
Well, so the father loves to give gifts to his children. Godly husbands should love to be provident and generous to their wives, their kids. Mm-hmm. So what, this sentence or this sentence?
Oh, this next one right here.
Okay, so we should note this. Do you want to go to this first?
Yeah, I was thinking this thing to go. Because one thing that I remember, it was a sweet thing that I remember noticing about Gabriel when God started showing this all to him. He was looking at his mom, who is the bargain queen, but she loves it. Some of the things he was looking at her as a son, going, why does she have to have this? She's not like picking on his dad, but just like, shouldn't she be being taken better care of here? And he actually mentioned it to his dad, and then his mom mentioned it, came back and talked to him about it, and she was just like, I like it this way. I'd rather get a bargain here and there and drive in the car with no AC till we can find a bargain on the part to fix it than spend extra money and take it in and get it done now, so I don't have to sweat in the heat. It's like, I'll get myself wet and have a cold drink and I'll be fine. But my whole point with that is, there are different women. Different women like different things. Different women have different tolerance meters and different constitution, and being able to bear certain things longer. And so you had written down here, know your wife, know what she likes, does she get a high off of clipping coupons? Then let her clip coupons. But if she doesn't, then don't necessarily lay that on her. Don't stop her. Like, I know your dad has said so many times that mom is just the bargain queen and she just loves to go get bargains, and that is her hobby. She loves it. Mm-hmm. I am not that way. And I know is a big blessing for me. I try and be wise and get bargains and sales where I can, but it's not my thing.
Right. Well, and I need you doing other things.
Yes.
So
and that perspective too was very, very big and different, because I used to thrift shop and now I don't have the time to thrift shop.
right.
And now I actually love thrift shopping and I miss thrift shopping, but having 5 kids, I really don't have the time ability taking 5 little kids to a
Mhm.
thrift shop, when normally the way you thrift shop is you go to like 3 to 5 in one day. That's kind of ridiculous. Not kind of, it is ridiculous. And it wouldn't be pleasant for me, the children, or everyone else in the store. I mean, on a good day, it could be fine, but it.
Right. So, yeah, the point of this is
That's kind of
for
like the lead up.
right. Yeah, for a husband to have a provident attitude, to have a generous attitude toward his wife, to be taking good care of her. Different ladies are different. Any marriage advice, any practical marriage advice, any podcast that you listen to is going to be from some person's perspective. And you got to stick to the biblical principles, and you got to get wise counsel from people that know you and not build your life on podcasters and influencers. But
and also ask your spouse.
Right. Yes.
Ask your spouse
Right.
and experiment and ask them, do you like this? Oh, you don't like that? Okay, I'm going to do that because those people over there said it.
Right. So I would say the biblical principle you have to deal with as a husband is, if you're a picture of God the Father in your home, if you're a picture of Christ the husband in your home, are you providing generously? Are you a father who gives serpents or fish? Right. You should have a provident attitude towards your spouse, towards your children, not a, well, make it work. I don't really care if it's hard for you. But that doesn't mean that it's going to look the same for everybody. You got to communicate with your spouse. You got to know your spouse. If bargain shopping is her thing, great. There's definitely a lot of different types of marriages. It works a lot of different ways for different people. The important thing is having a biblical attitude as a provider for the family.
And as a wife, sometimes you have to learn and stretch yourself in ways that you are not good at. Like I know I talked last time about learning to do the bills. And bargain shopping, if you guys are in a very tight area, you might, if you have never thrift shopped before, you might need to learn to thrift shop. It might not be your favorite thing. It might be repulsive to you. You might be used to wearing name brand clothes, but you need to be willing to adjust to what God has given you. It's different than if your husband's like, oh, well, no, you just have to work with what you have. That would be something you could have a conversation with him about. If, say, you're hearing this and that's what you're feeling like your husband's doing to you, well, then sit down and have a loving, kind conversation with your husband about this and say, have you thought about this? And give a little bit of details. And along with that, depending on your type of husband, some ideas on how this could be fixed, how much you might need to be able to make this work better, kind of thing. But just because, don't take this to mean that you, as a wife, you never have to learn to bargain shop, or that you just buy whatever and buy it at the highest price, because that there is not being a good steward of God's money.
Right. Yeah.
Just like, oh, I want it, I'm going to buy it.
That whole conversation is advice to the husband in having a right and provident attitude towards his right. What I was saying, right. The previous, when I was talking, I'm talking to the husband about having a provident attitude towards your wife and your family. A wife, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that out, because for a wife, you may need, Proverbs 31 is full of the industry. That's exactly what I was just
going to turn to.
The industry of a godly wife.
She's very industrious.
Yeah, so you may need to, just because he is ultimately responsible for providing for his household doesn't mean he's always going to be able to, or it's going to be easy for him to make as much as household needs, and you may need to help out in some way or another. And you certainly would want to be a wife who submits to and helps her husband, not a wife who is disgusted with him because he doesn't make as much money as you think he should. That's not your job. His job is to be a provident provider, and your job is to be a faithful helper and a good steward of what he brings in.
I was just looking, and I was thinking, the Proverbs 31 woman, you can tell she's conscientious about what she's doing and thinking about what she's doing. But a couple of points right here would be, she senses that her gain is good. She's paying attention. And then also right here, where's the other one? Oh, I just had my finger on it. She considers a field and buys it. She considers. She's not just crazily going about and getting something on her fancy. She's being wise. She's thinking about what she's doing before she purchases. She doesn't sit on Amazon and binge buy.
Right. Yeah.
Which I haven't ever binge bought, but I'm guilty of surfing Amazon and just finding all kinds of lovely things that I could use or want. And I have actually had to make a commitment for myself to not just go sit and scroll Amazon, because even if you're like looking at purses or dresses or something, you can find something you never knew you needed, quotes, needed, but you don't actually need it. Are you being wise? Do you have plenty of dresses? It's different if you need dresses. Your dresses have holes or whatever, or you're in a different size, or if you just haven't had a dress in a really long time and you'd like one, go look for a dress, find a beautiful dress and buy it. Yes, that's fine. Proverbs 31 woman, she makes coverings for herself. She's clothed in fine linen and purple. She's not wearing clothes with holes in them that are ugly and atrocious. But the point there, don't set yourself up to fail and want to binge buy or just have all these wants and needs that are of this world and not what am I trying to say? Do you know what I'm trying to say? That are not wants and needs, that are not of this, that are not things that will be investing in the kingdom right now.
Right. Have a kingdom focus and not a selfish focus.
Yes. But you got to kind of balance that out too, because like in the Bible, like I just said, Proverbs 31 woman, she does dress beautifully, but she's paying attention. You can tell by the whole thing about what she's doing. She's making belts and selling them to the tradesmen. She's considering before she buys. She's
right. Yeah, but it's not selfish to buy appropriate clothing for yourself.
No.
And that's part of the problem.
I think that is because I still end up feeling guilty to buy myself something that I like. It's like, oh, well, I could buy that thing that's $5 cheaper, but I really think it's ugly.
Right. And so that's where, and it's a good opportunity for husbands to lead and
I think
say,
it's false guilt. Sorry, false guilt thing.
Right. It's false guilt. And a husband needs to be like, hey, I want you to get what you need and not just need on a technicality. Like, I want you to have nice clothes. And so that's something you're going to have to work out in wisdom and communication. There's everybody's budget's different. Everybody's income's different. You have to be wise. You have to be financially wise.
Everyone's communication is different.
Yeah. But husband, if your wife is, she's walking around in a burlap sack and she's just, then take care of your wife.
Yeah, I use the Brother Andrew example, him and his wife.
Yes, that's a great example from Brother Andrew's, the book about Brother Andrew entitled God's Smuggler. He talks about his wife, where one day it just hit him that his wife
were going to an event, and she went up. She came to him kind of with tears in her eyes. She's like, I have nothing to wear to this nice event. And so he walked upstairs with her, and he's like, surely she's got something.
She's just being a woman saying she's got nothing to wear, but she's got plenty to wear.
Yeah.
And then she's going through, he's looking at the clothes with her.
He walked in and looked at them.
And he realizes that it's all just like rags. She's basically in tatters, and she has nothing good to wear. Mm-hmm. And so it convicted him. And he receives a letter at some point in that book from some lady that wrote him, and it's like, you're a mature Christian, Brother Andrew, start acting like one. But the basic rebuke being like, is God going to provide for your needs or not? Don't act like God is a miserly pauper up there in heaven who's afraid. He's just like eking out your existence. God provides for your needs, and you should have that attitude towards her. And so, ladies, just be realistic. Don't be selfish. Amen. If you have a shoe closet the size of the master bedroom, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah. Know yourself. Know if you're prone to going and overbuying. But I think honestly, a lot of moms that I've talked to, young moms with kids, they end up putting themselves last. They end up having the worst things for themselves because they end up feeling guilty. It's like, oh, well, the kids need shoes. I can technically go without new undergarments, even though they're falling to pieces. But then you would never let anyone else in your house have underclothes that look that bad. But it's a false guilt complex.
Right.
And I know it's a blessing to me. I'll still come to you and be like, I need such and such, but it's such and such amount of money. And you're like, well, would you buy it for anyone else in the house? Yes, 2 months ago. Go and buy it. So
yeah. So, and that's a good area where husbands too can take the lead and know your wife. If your wife is the kind of lady who likes to go to the mall and rack up a couple grand on the credit card, then you might need to say, hey, sweetheart, we need to talk. We need to set some kind of budget for your spending that's responsible, that fits with our income, etc. Because there are ladies like that.
Mm-hmm. And if you are a lady like that, ask, I want this much amount that I can go spend per month. Like, have a section. Limit yourself.
Well, limit yourself. And also, if you're a lady like that, then make sure you're being kingdom focused. You really can't just be being selfish. You can't just say, well, it's my personality, so it's fine. Well, if it's just selfish, pointless spending, that's not just a personality issue. That really doesn't square with biblical principles of stewardship.
My personality collects gorgeous purses and shoes.
Right. It's just who I am. I have to spend $500 a month on name brand purses. No, that's not just who you are. That's a bad thing.
A bad habit.
Right. I mean, in most cases, unless your family is so rolling in the dough that you got, bajillions of dollars to blow on something, you may as well buy a nice purse. Okay, fine. But the point is be a good steward. Yeah. And so some personality types are prone to go to the mall and rack up thousands of dollars on the credit card. That's a problem. I'm not saying, husband, live with your wife providently and feed her addiction to spending insane amounts of money. No, not at all. Yeah. You would need to lead her in, no, sweetheart, we need to talk about good stewardship.
Yeah. Here. That would definitely be also a communication thing too, not just husband be like, okay, we're clamping down here. It would be a good opportunity for the husband to lead in love. The wife would need to submit here, but a good opportunity for him to sit down and lovingly talk through this with his wife, not just spring on her.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that it should go without saying, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
As God gives husbands authority, but what does Scripture consistently bind the husband to? Love. That's the constant command of Scripture. Love your wife, love your wife, love your wife, love your wife. So whenever you have a thought or a conversation about a husband's authority, it should, doesn't always, but it should be remembered that should always be exercised in love. And so that's usually going to look a whole lot more like a kind and loving and gentle conversation than like so I went in there and yanked her purse off the wall and I shredded all her credit cards in front of her while she wept. Okay. Fail, right? You can't just say, well, I have the authority to do it. Well, how did God tell you to use your authority as a husband? You're supposed to love your wife. And so, it'd be much better. Even if you still have to say, you have to give me your credit card, sweetheart. You can't have it anymore. But you can still say that at the end of a kind conversation instead of tramping into the room.
And she still might cry. But it doesn't mean that it's not something the husband might ever have to do. Hopefully, Lord willing, in a good communication, good marriage, it would never happen that way.
Right. Yeah.
So this is just like extreme.
It's extremes. And again, this sort of thing always requires wisdom.
Yeah.
Because it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. And usually speaking, with mature adults, you shouldn't have to be like taking her credit card or something. And there are situations in marriages where husbands are being they're just being a miser and they're not letting their wife be a fully functioning adult, and they won't let her just like be mature and do what she needs to do. And that's not good either.
Or even you can flip it on there. While we're talking about wives overspending, husbands overspend too. Sure. You can flip it on the opposite side. And that would be where husbands will end up either buying sports equipment or depending on what kind of husband, like guns and ammo and survival stuff or video games, whatever he's into.
Right.
And that would be something where the wife would want to respectfully come and talk to her husband about this.
Yeah.
And if he's like, nope, I'm the husband, I do what I want, I don't care. Well, I would say first start with prayer. First start with praying for him, pray that God would change his mind, and wait a little bit. And then come and talk to him about it again. And if he's still of the same mind, then probably seek some advice. Maybe ask him. I say ask him. It'd be best, depending on your relationship, to ask him, hey, do you mind if I talk to your dad about this? Or our pastor about this?
Right.
Can we go talk to our pastor about this? Because this is really bugging me because of how possessive you are over this kind of thing. And it doesn't feel fair and even, like the way it should. Maybe fair and even isn't a good term for it, but the way it should. And then I say, depending on your relationship, ask him that, because if he says no, I wouldn't necessarily say that a wife shouldn't go and seek help anyway, but it would be better to say, hey, can we go do this together? Can we go talk to our pastor about this?
We're getting into our patriarchy episodes.
Yeah. Well, if you have anything you want to add to that, it was just kind of one
Yeah, no,
steps down the road kind of. I was just thinking for a husband, because it looks totally different. A wife isn't able to come to her husband and say, okay, give me your credit card.
right. She shouldn't. That wouldn't be biblical for
No,
her to try
exactly.
to flex her muscles in that way.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why I was saying she should go. If
right.
her husband has a spending problem and they can't have a mature conversation about it, she should seek help.
Right. There comes a point. There comes a point where a
Mhm.
wife, I mean, he's gambling away the money, the children can't eat. Okay, she needs to be able to get help.
Mhm.
There's a completely appropriate point for her to be able to go get help. So he should start with an attitude of wanting to provide and care for his wife and love.
Mhm.
She should start with an attitude of wanting to submit to her husband. And then you get these extreme, and usually in a healthy marriage with
Mhm.
good, mature adult communication, that right there solves most of it.
Yep.
Because they're just talking and they're working it out. He's making sure she's taken care of. She's making sure she's working within what he's providing. And it's great. And they're in harmony. And then you got these extreme wild cases where
Mhm.
she's going out and spending thousands of dollars on the credit card, or he's got a gambling problem. Okay, those are
Or even
extreme cases.
a spending problem too.
But right, yeah.
Yeah.
They're extreme cases that you have to.
I feel like we
that
really
we're going to
did
do an
have a
episode.
channel a lot.
We're going to get an episode on patriarchy for that. So it requires communication. It requires listening, as husband and wife. Husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. Oh, and yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to conclude with on that topic of, there are the spendthrifty sort of wives, and there are also the wives where a husband has an opportunity to lead her in saying, hey, you don't need to feel guilty for that. Like, know your wife, and if your wife is the kind of lady who is she's living in rags, she's providing for everybody else in the family, but she feels guilty about buying herself a nice dress, or she feels guilty about replacing the earrings that she lost or whatever, because, well, that's spending money on me. It's a good time for the husband to step in and say, sweetheart, that's part of why I earn money, is to take care of you. Like, buy what you need and unburden her of that guilt. And ladies, the point is, be a good, wise steward.
Mhm.
And yeah, your verse from Proverbs 31 is great. She didn't hesitate to clothe herself in fine linen and purple. She didn't say, well, I'm taking care of the house, but I myself shall live in burlap. And that's again, thinking like a pauper. You're not a pauper. You're a daughter of the king.
Mhm.
Men, you're a son of the king. You're taking care of a daughter of the king. We should act accordingly. Okay, we need to move on to the next topic.
No, go ahead.
So the next topic is for you. But before we move into the next topic, I want to quickly do the pitching stuff. If you're enjoying this conversation, retweet it. And our podcasts are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. On Thursday, I've got my own podcast, Where the Battle Runs Thick, where I talk about cultural events and apply the Bible to the hot topics on Twitter. And so join me live, same time on Thursdays for my podcast, Where the Battle Runs Thick. Go to GabrielHuddleston.com and find all the awesome attire and things that my wife has designed, and a lot of which are related to the songs which I have written that you can hear on iTunes and Spotify. Most recent one, Burn, a song I wrote for my sons. Go check that out on iTunes and Spotify.
Have the shirt up.
And the shirt is now up at GabrielHuddleston.com. So check out the stuff that my wife designed. A lot of it goes along with the songs that I've published and that she's sung on some of them and done the cover art for. And some of them are just her own ideas, but they're all great, and you should go check them out. That's GabrielHuddleston.com. And also, I haven't opened it yet, but I actually have my first published work. I didn't write the whole magazine, but the latest Fight, Laugh, Feast magazine is on dispensationalists, the dank right, and the Jews. So pretty spicy. And there's an article in there written by yours truly. So if you are subscribed to Fight, Laugh, Feast, be sure to check out the article in there by me. So that was an exciting opportunity, and that's pretty cool to have something in print and not just on screen. Okay, so with the pitching having been pitched, next topic is yours.
Okay, so next topic I kind of want to pick up where I feel like we touched on it last time, but I didn't get to fully flesh out part of it that I wanted to say. When hopping back a little bit, we talked about our history last time and how we originally rented a really small place. And then we bought this little RV, put it on property we were planning to build. Didn't pan out. So pause right there in the area that we were at. We ended up moving into the RV sooner than we had planned. And then we are out there. I was pregnant with our second, and we had our second there. I actually got pregnant with our third while we were there, but right before that, um our situation was kind of we were caught in this kind of limbo because we moved out there to save up money to put a house on the property, and then we didn't end up putting a house on the property because of the tax legislations and stuff. And then also work wasn't prosperous out there like we had hoped it was going to be. And then our family kept growing and we kept adding on to the little place did not have a proper bathroom, didn't even have a proper toilet. We had to walk over to shower at his parents' house. And we had a lot of good memories there. We got to spend a lot of good time with his family there. But our housing situation was less than ideal. It was not great. So saying all that, kind of sum up, envision, that's where we are at. So in that time, Gabriel was more thinking, well, we don't want to go into debt. We don't want to rent because renting is a waste of money. We want to save up money and we want to have our own place. So we tried for, let's see, we moved out there when I was pregnant with our second. And then we tried saving up money. So this probably must have been like a year and a half that we tried to save up money. And we managed to save up like $900 at the most, if we even had that by the time we moved. You know what? I think we ended up having like $1,200 because we had enough for the first down payment when we rented. But we didn't manage to because our family was growing and we had more expenses. Work wasn't as prosperous as we hoped. And we moved into it before it was finished. So we were continually trying to finish it. And it just didn't work. Trying to live on a one person working income while the wife stays at home and takes care of the kids, there's really not that much left to save up enough to actually build a house.
That can be the case.
Well, at least the way we were living.
Yeah.
And so in that time, I remember thinking, this is really hard. We were supposed to put a bathroom in. A bathroom hasn't been put in. It doesn't look like a bathroom is going to be put in. And this is really hard. This is really dark place. There's hardly any windows. The kids have hardly any space to move around. And we talked about it at the time. But I remember you were still like, we shouldn't go into debt. That's basically a sin to go into debt. Mm-hmm. And then I mentioned renting. You're like, that's just a waste of money. You're throwing your money down the tubes. You don't want to do that. This is all I can see for us to do. We just need to stay here and we need to try and keep trying and keep save as much as we can everywhere. And I remember talking to several ladies in our church at the time and my mom. And I remember one lady at church and my mom particularly, both of them individually in individual conversations with I was talking about, just the situation and that it's not getting any better. And me and the kids are in this small space all day kind of thing. And he's going to work and he was working still. He wasn't being a lazy bum just sitting around, but we really didn't have a good living situation here. And it wasn't getting better. And we didn't see any trajectory for it getting better anymore either. We had no plan anymore, basically, because we couldn't put a house on that property. So I remember both of them independently saying, you have enough money to rent. How much are you making? And I went through with them and you just aren't choosing where to put your money. They said, if you choose where to put your money, you can have enough to rent a modest sized house. And I remember thinking, no way. And then they helped me do a little bit of research and chart out. It's oh, we really could. We could do this. And I remember at that time in our marriage, what you liked a lot was me bringing it to you and presenting it to you. We do a lot more talking through things together now, which I think is a whole lot better. Just free, open communication. But at that time, we didn't really have that. And so they helped me come up with a layout of a budget with the chunk of money on the top for renting. And I remember along with this, I was also praying. I remember praying because it was really hard. It was really hard living situation. And just to emphasize again, we had a lot of good memories there. It seems silly, but I still miss the tiny closeness of it with all those Christmas lights. And I remember sitting at the little table and being lazy and rinsing your hand in the sink, putting that on the table because the sink was literally right there. You could just touch it. But I remember presenting that to you. And after doing lots of praying, presenting that to you on a date that we were on. And I remember you looked over it and you're like, we can try that. And I remember that's how we ended up in our first house. And I remember that was really exciting to me. And it was the answer to a lot of prayer that I had prayed. And I know that my mom and the other lady from church were praying too, that you would like this idea and that this would be a blessing. And it was a tremendous blessing for us to be in a rental that actually we felt like kings with our one bathroom, and it was a 3-bedroom, and it was good for quite a while. But did you have anything to say on that? Or
I'm waiting to see what all you get to.
okay, and then the next thing would be in that house, once we started to grow out of that house, and also just, I can't remember what put it into my head. I think it was that we started to grow out of the house, just that we needed more space again. We had another kid. I think I was pregnant again, and we needed more space. And so I was thinking, well, why don't we buy? Is it really a sin to go into debt? Is this really that big of a deal? Because I see a lot of my family doing it wisely, not just being like, oh, I'm going to go get a mansion and I'm going to be in debt for, eons. But it's like, how are you supposed to do this? How are we supposed to do this? And I remember talking to you about it. And I remember you did not agree at the time. You didn't agree at the time. No, I don't want to go into debt. I want to keep trying to save up. And I remember leaving it there. And I remember praying about it for a good chunk of time again before bringing it up, and just praying that God would change your mind / bring something about. And then I remember talking about it again. This was like a 3-part phase. And I remember talking to you about it again. And you're like, okay, I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to think about that. I can see maybe doing that down the road, but I'm not ready right now. And because I had gotten some more information to present you with. And I remember that was hard because I remember finding, I can't remember what was Luis called. Sales agent,
loan agent, something like that.
Yeah. So I found this, we talked to the same loan agent as my parents had used, and just talking through what it would look like and everything. And I remember I was really hopeful because it all sounded really good to me and it made a whole lot of sense. And then I remember afterwards, you heard it all, listened to it all, but you weren't ready to move forward with it. So I remember that was difficult and hard to let go of and not want to be pushy on. I don't remember being pushy on. Do you remember me being pushy on it? I just remember doing it was like a constant prayer in the back of my head. And I remember another time, because our lease, we had year lease. And so I remember when our lease ended, I remember we did a half lease at one point. And then I think, I can't remember for sure, but I just remember when our lease was about to end, I remember talking to you about it too. And I remember feeling like that was a good turning point in my prayer life, my letting you lead without having a breakdown about it. Because I remember, and I think I remember you noticing too and thanking me for it, because I remember asking you, can we look into buying a house now? Our lease is about done. And I remember you thinking about it, and I'm pretty sure you prayed about it. And I asked you a little bit later, and you said, no, I want to stay here for another 6 months, 3 months. Do you remember that conversation?
Mm.
And I remember like, okay, Lord, we're going to stay here for longer. Okay. And just accepting it and moving on. And then when God's timing was right, I remember it was you just decided, yeah, I think this is a good idea. But I remember just that whole process. A lot of the changes that happened in you were not because I talked you into them. I did talk to you. I talked to you freely about these things. Not as openly and freely as we are now, but we talked about these things. And I did more of a present style, but we did a lot of talking about these things. But a lot of the changes I saw in you, like even being willing to rent, was because I was praying about it. I was praying about it, and God chose to change your mind about it. I don't even know how else your mind got changed because nothing happened other than just me praying about it. And I mean, we talked about it, but it wasn't like I argued him into agreeing with me. I just wanted to really emphasize the importance of prayer for a wife. If you do not agree with what your husband is doing, doesn't mean he's wrong. It might just mean that he has a different opinion and God did choose him to be your leader in the relationship. And you also chose to put yourself under him and be in subjection to him. So you cannot complain when your leader is leading you. And if he's being micromanaging, okay, fine. That's totally different. This is not a micromanaging area here. This is a different opinion. And in a difference of opinion, prayer should be your first option. And a lot of the time, well, God always is in control, but a lot of the time, God goes before you when you pray about the situation. So I wanted to lay that out, my experience for wives, to pray when your husband disagrees with you. You might be wrong or you might be right, either way, but pray about it and give the Lord time to work. Don't just try and make something happen on your own, because oftentimes if you try and make something happen on your own, you end up making things worse, even if you get your way, quote, get your way.
Yeah, and that advice goes for both spouses. We're far too prone to rely on the arm of the flesh and not to go to the Lord in prayer and wait patiently for him to work in our spouse. And there have been many things in our marriage where we would be having a fight over who knows what, and it's just hour-long conversation that's just emotional and stressful and exhausting, and an hour-long, 3-hour-long, late into the night, and then
especially in our early marriage, we talked way too much.
Yeah, and then we gave up, and then we prayed about it, and then God fixed it. And it came to a point of just recognizing, wait a second, why aren't we doing this first? Like, why don't God can work in her heart? God can work in my heart. So wives, don't nag your husband. Pray for him. Husband, don't badger and pressure your wife. Pray for her.
And sometimes the other spouse just needs time to adjust, honestly. If it's not what they were expecting or planning on, if you have a conversation and they really don't agree with it, we've had that one frequently too. I don't like change. I do not like change. And he is very spontaneous. So things will come up where he's like, oh, we're going to do this. Like, wait, what? No, what? That won't work. That won't work because of this, this, and this, and this. But if most of the time, if I take a minute and try not to do all that, I generally, unfortunately, still do all of that. I feel like it's gotten smaller. I hope it's gotten smaller because it feels like it's gotten small. But if I don't freak out and then, okay, that's not what I was planning. Let me rethink this. And he gives me some time. A lot of the time, I can readjust to the plan and it's fine. Like, okay, that's what we're going to do. Okay, this will be fine. You giving me time to adjust is thinking different personalities. Make sure you give your spouse time to adjust.
Well, and that's a good thing, a good note for husbands too. Living with your wife in an understanding way, and going back to what we talked about beforehand about a husband's authority, God constantly binds it in love. And so just because you have plenary authority doesn't mean that you should use it like a jerk. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And so, yes.
Wives to their husbands too.
Right. Wait, what?
Do unto your husbands.
Oh, do unto your husbands as you'd have them do.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like wives, sorry, that was a little rabbit trail thing. Sometimes wives, it feels like they end up feeling like because they feel it, they get to do whatever they want.
Right. Yeah, that's not fair either. But as a husband, can doesn't equal should. And just because you can tell your wife, by the way, I canceled all the rest of the plans for this month and I've changed them to something else, that doesn't mean that you should. That's not living with your wife in an understanding way. If you do need to make a change on something, then you need to make that change. But there's a way to do that lovingly, and there's a way to do that that demonstrates to her that you don't really care how hard it is for her, how much she's going to have to rearrange, etc. Some of the time, the way that patriarchy or the authority of a husband is discussed, it's discussed like you're just supposed to bark orders. Woman, make me a sandwich. And so if you need to change something with the schedule, you just call her in, have her stand at attention, and you bark the orders. Here's what's changing, and
she says, "Yes, my lord," with a salute, and then off she trots.
Right. That's not a biblical picture of loving your wife and living with her in an understanding way. You need to recognize if she is doing all this planning and everything, and she's generally running the schedule for the family events and everything, you need to be understanding of that. Like, don't be a jerk.
So what practically does that normally look like for us?
So practically well, I was just thinking about it because of what you said of me saying, if I change something and you feel like you got to freak out. And so for the wife, your biblical goal would be to submit to your husband, follow his leadership, trust the Lord.
Don't speak before, what is that verse about? Speaking.
Don't let your mouth get ahead of the Holy Spirit, basically.
Well, yeah.
Yep. And then for the husband, it would be, are you living with your wife in an understanding way? There may be situations where you have to say, sweetheart, I've got to change this. I've got to change it now. I'm sorry. We don't have time for a conversation. Okay, I get it. But usually, you should be able to sit down and say, hey, I know we were planning to do this in 2 weeks, but I really think we need to do this. Can we make that work? And you talk to her about it and you help her figure out the details. And that's how a lot of this stuff works for us now.
And honestly, a lot of the time, these conversations are not had across the table like a business meeting.
Right.
They're had where you draw me into your lap, especially if you know it's something that's going to be a difficult change for me. You put your arm around me. You are gentle in the way you say it. You talk to me kindly and lovingly through this. You kind of, coach me through in a way, especially if you know it's something that's going to be hard for me.
Right. Be a leader, not just a boss, a leader.
Yes.
And so, so much of these conversations.
In like a loving way too, that part. I just wanted to.
So many of these conversations are presented so just like brusquely, like, well, you have the authority as the patriarch. Well, love your wife. So a lot of the conversations, and it's not manipulation. It's not manipulation in either direction. It's not like, okay, I'm going to be really sweet to her to manipulate her into being happy with my decision. No, I'm making the decision that I believe the Lord wants us to make for the family. Yeah. Not based on how she reacts. But as I make that decision, I want to do it in a way that's loving her and helping her, and not in a way that's like, oh, by the way, I'm just going to reroute your week and I don't care.
Oh, I mean, that'd be the same for the wife. You don't want to. I personally don't agree with the Esther treatment. I don't think that's necessarily helpful for Christians, because Esther treatment, in short, just the, wine and dine him and then make your request kind of thing. I know that has been proposed in Christian circles. And it's something that my mom mentioned. She's like, I see why, but why they would say this, because this is an example in the Bible, but it's really not a good example, because Esther was married to a pagan king. She was dealing with a worldly pagan king. So why are we taking this example as the way that we're supposed to treat our God-fearing husbands?
Right. I mean, it may be necessary in some cases.
Yes.
But to make that the normative, you should do that for your husband because he'll love it. Wine him and dine him and all that. That's great.
Yes,
but don't do it to manipulate a response out of it.
Because it really is a type of manipulation. Because she's like, oh, come to my feast. And then he asks, what do you want? And she says, oh, come to my feast again tomorrow. She does this, I think, 3 times. What else is that other than a form of manipulation? Okay, he doesn't mind being manipulated here. He probably knows he's being manipulated here. He's enjoying the manipulation. But is that really something we as Christians want to emulate? I don't think biblically we can say that that's something as Christians we want to emulate. And I'm mentioning that for just for wives, you want to, the way you say your words does matter. The Bible talks so much about having a tongue of life, and about in James about how much harm you can cause with your tongue. So as wives too, you were mentioning being kind to your wife in the way you say it. It does matter the way you approach your husband. You want to approach, if you're wanting more money for the groceries, you say, I need more groceries money now. I mean, why would you even talk that way to your husband? I mean, darling, I really need more grocery money. This is what I'm dealing with. I don't have enough money here and here, or even presenting as, depending on your husband, this is what I'm trying to figure out here. Can you help me with this? Because I'm not able to make this work.
And a lot of times men will resonate to that kind of language.
They like,
oh, there's a problem that I can help you fix. Sure. Let's sit down and figure out how to fix it. Mm-hmm. That's helpful. That's honestly very helpful for a lot of men, because we're just like, I don't understand why you're upset.
I mean,
I want to help you, but I don't know how to help you. And if you can specify, here's what I'm struggling with. Can you help me figure this out? A lot of times husbands will be like, oh yeah, let's.
And also, wives, if your husband has you doing the budget too, if you oftentimes, what I'll do when we have extra money and I know we have extra expenses or things that we need to put it towards, like school stuff or clothes or Christmas or whatever, I will make a rundown of the budget and I'll say, okay, I'm going to do this. So he sits down, it's all bullet pointed, and then we discuss it. And then we move some things around. Sometimes he's like, great, go for it. Other times like, okay, wait, now I want to take this here and that there. But just with that, just thinking, sorry, I got distracted. I don't know why I got distracted. Sorry. Anyway.
That's okay.
I had one more thing. I remembered. I forgot to mention about the iPad thing. But once you're done.
Well, go ahead.
Just let me see. I feel like I didn't finish that thought. Just the thought of, it matters, wives, it matters how you talk to your husband too. Talk to him as you would talk to your friends. Plus, respect for your husband. The Bible tells women to be respectful to their husbands. So don't just talk to him. Almost, it feels like I think it's kind of jumping a little bit ahead here, right here. I don't know what you're going to talk about here, but the idea of your house training your husband is terrible. The way wives will not talk in respect to their husbands, like, oh, he doesn't know what I need, and I just get out as much money as I can from him, kind of like I Love Lucy, in that kind of dynamic where she's always spending as much as she possibly can, and then she's afraid to tell him how much, and she like tries to eat the receipts and stuff and all that ridiculousness because she doesn't want him to know how much she spent. That kind of trying to get as much out of your husband and not actually respecting him and just talking to him about it. Just rabbit trail. It's bad. Respect your husband. Talk openly. Talk in love, like the Bible talks about.
Right. Yeah. Be mature adults. We can get so stuck on, like, God does give roles to the husband and the wife. The husband is in a position of authority, but we can get so stuck on just constantly discussing authority and submission that it's like you stop acting just like mature adults and just talking. And you know what? Mature adults are in authority and submission relationships all the time. You talk to your boss, you talk to your pastor, you talk to a police officer. There's a bunch of these different authority and submission relationships. And when both parties are mature, usually it's just pleasant interactions. It's just pleasant conversations where both parties want to help the other person. The one party respects the authority of the other party, and the party in authority respects the needs and the condition of the person under authority. The problem comes in when one or the other, either, you're resisting arrest, you're fighting against the authority. Okay, now you got a problem. Or you're an authority who's just flexing your muscles. You're causing problems. Yeah. For husbands and wives, if you're loving each other maturely, then so much of this stuff should be just conversations that you can work out together.
Sometimes it feels like husbands and wives take away the basic elements of politeness that you would give to any other person.
Right.
And just because we know each other so well, we end up letting our guard down so much that we don't love and respect each other in the way that we talk.
Right. But that also, though, doesn't mean that you should then just interact like buddies.
No.
Because you should be friends. Best, closest friends and
There should be a
lovers.
friendly
Absolutely.
aspect.
Totally friendly, loving, warm attitude towards each other. But that's different than just like a buddy. Like, no, the Bible says wives respect your
Married
husbands.
to my favorite weirdo.
Yes. Yeah. I hate that stereotype of marriage is an endless sleepover with my favorite weirdo. You see that on cups and stuff. No, he's your husband. You need to respect him as your Lord and your husband. Or no, she's not a weirdo. She may be a little crazy sometimes, but she's your wife. You're supposed to honor her as your fellow heir of the grace of life. Like this isn't just two teenagers shacking up indefinitely. This is a marriage and it deserves respect. So there is a seriousness, a gravitas to the relationship for sure. But okay, now.
One more side note. I think I mentioned it. I cannot remember. Oh. Checking on our child over there. Okay. Yeah, what'd you do? Okay, anyway. I think she's turning the Wii on. Could you go investigate that?
It's not for you.
Okay, she didn't. Okay. Our 17-month-old getting a hold of remotes. Sorry. So anyway, so the thing I wanted to just rabbit trail on, I cannot remember if I mentioned it last time or not, but one thing more to wives about letting their husbands lead in finances. So as wives, sometimes we want to make a certain purchase or whatever, and we will save up for it, we will plan on it or something like that, or we will have a clothing need. The two that I'm thinking of, I have you could say good example, bad example, basically like one example where he went my way, one example where he didn't go my way. So let's see if I can sum up what I'm talking about. I'm trying to talk about let your husband I feel like I totally messed this up. I am too tired. Okay. Give me just 1 second. Do you have anything to talk about in the interim? That was terrible. That's terrible.
Sure.
Okay, just a second.
While she's thinking, I see we're getting some reactions on Facebook. We pay attention to comments. So if you're watching, you have questions or comments, put them in the comments. And if you're enjoying this conversation, please do share it. I wanted to talk briefly about debt while you're thinking. We have mentioned debt and my changing perspective on debt. And I talked more about it in the last episode. I'm not going to go into it in depth here. It's just my perspective on debt has gone from debt as being unilaterally a curse to rather seeing it as a tool that can be used wisely. And it can also be a curse. It really can. Biblically, you have to accept what the Bible says about debt, that the borrower becomes the lender's slave. Debt it's not your money. That credit card is not your money. And so if you rack up $10,000 on your credit card, you're now indebted. You're enslaved to that credit card company until you get that paid off. So you should have a very aggressive anti-debt attitude. And that was part of why I didn't want to get a mortgage, because a mortgage was debt, etc. Okay. That doesn't mean, however, that there is never an appropriate time where debt is actually helpful, where it's actually a good tool. And it's actually the wise decision to get a mortgage, for example, which we ended up doing. And I ended up concluding, I need to provide for my family. And this is the next step to where our money is actually going into something. And I'm saving. We're actually building now. We've got a baseline that we're building on top of instead of just constantly trying to start and not getting anywhere.
And we were super, super thankful that was the decision that you made, because when everything skyrocketed, our mortgage was less than it would be to be paying a rental payment for a smaller place. The small place that we moved out of was more than our mortgage payment is.
Yeah. So to the husband, just remember debt is a tool. Use it biblically. It's not a tool to self-aggrandize, buy yourself a nice boat. Like, no. But you may need to get a mortgage. Keep your debt to a minimum, but you may need to use it wisely to start a business or to get a home. View it as a tool. Use it wisely. Use it under biblical principles and provide for your family. As you are walking humbly with God and you're living with your wife in an understanding way and you're caring for the needs of your kids, you may need to just step out on faith and take the plunge and start renting somewhere or get a mortgage or whatever. Not foolishly. You should be getting wise counsel. The plans of the diligent lead surely to advantage. So I'm not in any way saying just fly by the seat of your
Yeah.
pants and make crazy decisions.
Practical, we had you had a limit on how much debt you were willing to go into.
Yes.
And we had a limit on how much we could pay as a monthly payment, and that determined what houses we looked at. And we actually did look at some houses that were above our price range, and we liked them a lot. But both of us felt convicted that, yeah, we really like this and we really want to have a house, but this does not feel wise.
Yeah, and
we will be sorry for this.
We concluded that we needed to stop house shopping because we couldn't afford the market. And so we kind of gave up on that dream for a while. And then after we had given up on it and just like, okay, Lord, I guess we're not getting a house right now. Yeah. Then the Lord ended up bringing the house that we ended up buying across our path.
We were looking up 1,800 square foot homes. And I just had the idea, I wonder if there's any 1,750 square foot homes. And I looked that up and there was ours right there.
Yeah.
We were like, no way. This isn't possible.
Yeah. So
God had it just laying there for us.
So that's another principle to remember is just don't get, I am a very impulsive kind of person where, okay, I want to get it. And so, okay, well, it's more money than we were planning on or whatever, but we're here and it looks great and let's just get it. Well, don't do that. Don't impulse buy. Be wise, but do follow the Lord and be willing to take a step. There's a big difference between stepping out on faith and just making impulsive, foolish decisions. Those are not the same thing. But if you're walking humbly with God, according to biblical principle, getting godly counsel, and you feel God telling you to jump, then jump. Step out on faith. And as the husband, you may need to just make more money. You may need to find a way to say, okay, well, this is what my family needs. We're going to do it. And I'm going to trust the Lord to provide. And I'm not going to expect that to happen by magic. I'm going to do what I have to do to get out there and bring home the bacon. So, okay, that takes care of that one.
Okay. I have collected my thoughts better. Hopefully. Sorry, that was atrocious earlier. So what I wanted to talk about briefly to wives was learn to let your husband make the decision and it be freeing. A lot of the times, I know I'm a perfectionist and I like to make the decision myself. It's like, I can make the decision. It's fine. I'm okay with making the decisions. I'm not a shy, I was going to say undecided person, but it takes me a lot of the times I know exactly what I want. But then when I don't know what I want, it takes me forever. So I can't quite say that. So anyway, but I feel like within the last year or so, probably 2 years, I think I'm somewhere between a year and a half, that I have been growing and learning to lean into letting my husband make the decision for me if I am feeling stressed or I don't know what to do about it. So a good example would be earlier this year when we were going to a friend's wedding and I had a baby the year previous. My formal dress, the wedding was formal. She had asked everyone to come as formal as possible. And so it's like, yay, I'll get to buy a new formal dress that'll fit me in this stage of my weight after having a baby. And so I was really excited to do that. I asked him, can I do that? And he said, yeah, go ahead and get what you need. And so I ordered dress well in advance. I ordered it well in advance. We have a PO box and that causes so many mailing problems randomly. So I ordered this dress and it was probably coming from China or something. And I even paid extra for it to get here in time. It did not get here in time. And there was a whole mix up where I didn't realize where the Amazon messages were, etc. But so anyway, did not get here in time. 2 weeks before the wedding, I do not have anything to wear. Very typical woman thing to say. I have nothing to wear. But so I didn't have anything to wear and I didn't know what to do. I spent like 5 hours that day trying to figure out what to do. I had got, I think, 3 dresses sent from Amazon. One was kind of the other one, well, one was really ugly. And then And the other one was like, oh, this would be okay, but there's a rip in the front. The other one looked nice, but it wasn't my favorite style, but it was also the most expensive one, but it was kind of the color I was wanting. I had been wanting to get a dress, a specific type of dress, because like, I've got to spend money. I'm going to spend money on the type of dress I want. Well, I could not find the type of dress I wanted. And I was in much internal wrath and agony over this for hours. And I didn't want to bother him about it because I thought it would be a bother to him and it'd be girl problems talking about dresses. And he came home and I was trying to be fine, which doesn't work. But I was trying to be fine. He's like, what's wrong? And so of course I told him. And he, in like 5 minutes, just decided, he's like, because the dilemma was, I want this one dress that looks perfect that I was really, really wanting, but then we need the dress by in 2 weeks for the wedding. And it might have even just been 1 week. I can't remember. It was really close. And so there's no way to get that one and then have this one. And so he sat there, he thought about it for like 5 minutes. That was it. 5 minutes. He's like, keep both. Just keep both this time. And I remember just like, oh, really? That's over. That's it. And he just made that decision. And yes, that was a decision that I liked. But there's been many situations like that where I have been trying to grow in, saying, this feels so stressful. Can you make this decision, please? I don't want to make this decision. And actually letting my emotions go, my control of that go, and actually letting him make that decision and taking it. Normally isn't a problem for him to make this decision. It does not stress him. There was another time where we were going to have a friend over, and friends are friends, and they had a little cold, and me and her were going back and forth. She's like, what do we do? Do we get together? Do we not get together? Do we want to get a cold? Do we not? And both of us, I texted her and then she texted right after. We were both like, maybe we should just ask our husbands. And we had spent like 45 minutes on this. They talked, of course, 5 minutes, like, it'll be fine. We'll get together this time. It was ridiculous. We'll just get together. Again, so much relief and stress was lifted by me just letting him make the decision. So I have grown, I feel like, in letting myself let you make the decision and actually asking him to make the decision if I don't know or if I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed in it. But when I do that, I need to let him do that. If I ask him to make the decision, it is wrong of me to be upset at the decision he made. That is totally not fair to him and not right of me. So now jump to, on the flip side, sometimes the decision is not what you wanted it to be. So there was a purchase that I was wanting to make.
Before you tell the iPad story, just let me clarify.
Oh, go ahead.
You're specifically talking about inviting on a decision you're struggling with.
Yeah.
That you're inviting me. You're not. What we're not saying is you decide whether or not he's allowed to make decisions, and then on the ones that you want him to, because you keep saying let him make the decision, ask him to make the decision. That she's not saying that it's only the ones that she asks me that I'm allowed to speak into. That's not what she's saying.
What I'm meaning is specifically there have been decisions where it's either spending a lot of money or something that I'm trying to figure out, or I am stressing over, something that is causing me emotional angst, or I just really don't know what to do. Actually, instead of just waiting for him to volunteer to make the decision, actually bringing it to him and saying, hey, can you make this decision?
Yes, you're talking about finding a peace and a refuge and being able to say, you know what, I'm going to let my husband figure this out, and resting in that.
A peace and a rest in resting in your authority and you being willing to do that.
Which I think just squares with how God made men and women in general. Men being much more practically minded. I mean, obviously this is generalizing, right?
Yeah.
But it's no surprise that God would give authority to husbands. I don't think God just flipped a coin and was like, well, I guess it's him for no real reason.
Does that matter the fact that, he's generally more consistent emotionally, doesn't have as many hormones, and, doesn't have the ups and downs every month that had nothing to do with it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's completely arbitrary. So what you're talking about, leaning into that and saying, hey, praise God. God gave me a husband who's
I definitely
able to make those decisions. So
I was not meaning that.
I know you weren't meaning
that. Husbands do I mean, when you get married, your husband, you have accepted that you are under this man's leadership and you are in subjection to him. That's what you did when you got married. So your husband is allowed to get into any area of your life. And like he talked about, of course, that doesn't mean micromanaging, and it doesn't mean it doesn't mean micromanaging tyranny, but it does mean he can look down into your life, which sometimes is a struggle as a wife, to be like, wait, no, I wanted to decide that one. But when you got married to this man, you put yourself in subjection to him. And that's just biblical. I mean, it's not always my favorite, but it is biblical.
So the iPad.
So yes, the iPad. So the iPad, that is story on the opposite side, where he made a decision that was not my favorite. That is not the decision I wanted to make, but it was a good decision because I had saved up. I think this is the third time I had saved up to replace my old iPad. I have a really old one, and I wanted to get a new one for all my art and stuff. And I had saved up for it. And then we had a bunch of taxes hit us that were a lot higher than we realized they were going to be from last year. And we had that money sitting there, and I really wanted to still use it because I had saved it up for the third time, and I really, really wanted to use it, and I really wanted to buy it. But I didn't buy it because it was a big purchase. And also, I kind of in the back of my head thought this is probably not a good idea, but I really, really, really wanted to do it. So, because, I wanted to, because I saved up money, and we talked about it, and he did it in a very loving, kind way. He's like, sweetheart, I know you saved up this money, but we really can't afford it right now. We need to save that money. We'll be really sorry if we don't have that money. We can't do it right now. I'm so sorry. And I think I cried. I was disappointed, but I knew he was right, even though I didn't like the decision he made. And guess what? We needed that money to pay our taxes. We did. And so he made the right decision. And I'm glad, even though it wasn't what I wanted to do, I'm glad that he made that decision and we weren't $390 short on what we needed to help pay our taxes. So that is, and it happens, and I know it happens in other areas too. Can you think of any others? Because I thought of two good my way examples, as opposed to, as it doesn't always go my way, and that's something that I have had to work at, being okay with the fact that it isn't always going to go my way. And I love it when it does. Yay, wonderful. It makes me feel good. He chose what I liked. But it's not fair of me to expect him to take that weight of making the decision and also not get the perks of it, not actually get to make the decision, him just being like, oh, well, I make the decision, quote, but I always decide her way. Well, that's not actually him deciding. That's him deciding based on my emotions. And it's not fair of me if I'm really wanting to be a good, loving wife and be subject to my husband. And I am learning to, and I am trying to rest in this peace, this relief where I don't, it's not on me. I didn't make the decision. I don't need to worry about it. I can just follow my husband in this thing that he decided. It's not fair on me to then be upset at him, especially he's going to need to decide random decisions. Yes. But especially if I asked him to decide it, that's totally wrong of me to be upset. Well, you weren't supposed to decide that way. That's not him deciding. That's not me letting him lead and make the decision.
Right. You cannot expect your husband to take responsibility but not have authority.
Yes.
Those go together.
It's not fair of the wife to expect that.
Right. And on the other side, a husband can't claim authority and not accept responsibility. They go together.
Yeah. And if I'm going to rest in you taking the responsibility for that decision, I need to actually rest in that and not expect every time it's going to go my way.
Right.
But that's just something that I have been working. I feel like God has been working in me, and just the peace to be able to just actually do that and rest in that, rest in your authority there. And no, it's not always sunshine and lollipops. And no, I do not do it perfectly, but
Right. But what
I
you're
think
you're talking
think
about,
yeah,
yeah,
I think that kind of sums up. Yeah, just following your leadership when you like it and when you don't.
Right.
And also just a caveat, I said especially when you ask him, but that you can't be upset at him for the making of the decision. That doesn't give you permission when you didn't ask him to be upset at him when he makes the decision either. So just a
Right.
clarification right there. I'm not meaning that.
Right.
You're not
That's
supposed
the
to, you're not allowed
that's
to
the
be upset at him
stereotype.
either. But when he makes the decision, just when he feels like he needs to make a decision. And that's when you need to trust the Lord and trust your man.
Right. Yeah, because the stereotype is that, you know, he makes the decision when she asks him to, and that's when he's allowed to, you know, then he's allowed to make the decision so long as it's the one he likes.
He makes the big decisions, and she tells me when the big decisions are.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's simply not biblical. And that is the point.
Yeah.
That is the point. Is husband, God gave you authority, and he tells you to love your wife with it. And wife, God told you to submit to your husband, and there is joy and peace in doing that because you're trusting God and you're trusting your husband. So submit to your husband.
And actually just letting it go. I hope I explained it well. I feel like I'm a little muddle-headed and tired.
Well, yeah, that's a good phrase, letting it go. So yeah, you submit to your husband, and when he makes a decision, you let it go. And you're like, okay, that's what we're doing. And he will not always make the right decision. He will make mistakes sometimes. And you have to trust. And sometimes he'll make the right decision and you won't like it.
And then later you find out, well, that was the right decision.
Right. So
you followed, and if you followed in a good attitude, you'll be really glad.
And you will have nothing to repent of.
Yes.
Because
then if you had a bad attitude or complained about it or tried to talk him out of it, and then you just made it hard on him to do what he felt like he should do, wanted you to do as a family, and then you have to repent of that later. Or, I mean, it could be even worse if you talk him out of making a decision, and then later that's on you.
Right. And even if it is the wrong decision, if he does make the wrong decision, you pray about it. You submit to him. You do your job, and you let God act, because God can straighten things out.
And it's also not, if he does make the wrong decision, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not in like an evil pleasure way or anything. But if you do make the wrong decision, I'm not responsible for it.
Right.
If I have spoken my piece and I don't think this is a good idea, and then we go ahead and do it,
you can give it to the Lord,
it's not my fault.
Right. And that's where it's okay, husband, you have authority to make that decision. You also have the responsibility for the decision you made. Now you got to get your family out of the mess you got your family into because you didn't listen to your wife. But he gets the mantle of authority and responsibility. She submits to his authority and rests in his responsibility. They go together. You can't pick one or the other. And that's critical to be understood. And so that's huge. There was something else I was just thinking with that specifically. And we talked also about the timing. There were things that you were hoping for. Even the van was another one.
Oh yeah.
You were wanting, to upgrade the vehicle. And I said, nope, not yet. And
still going all right. Still going right.
And then, okay, now it's time. Ladies, don't have an attitude of, well, I know what we need to do, but my husband hasn't gotten around to it yet. You should have an attitude of, well, this is what I'm praying towards, and I'm trusting that when it's God's timing, God will lay it on my husband's heart. Or if it's not God's time, then we won't do it.
Yes. And there also could be situations where the husband isn't engaging rightly and the wife is, but she isn't the one in authority to make that happen. She shouldn't step out of her boundaries to make it happen, even if the husband's going to be wrong.
Sure, but I'm saying that just because he is not on the same timetable as his wife, that doesn't mean that he's wrong. That may mean that it's not God's timing yet.
Yeah. Or she could be wrong.
She could be wrong, right? So just don't have the don't have the attitude of, he'll come around eventually. I thought we should do it for years, and then he finally came. He finally got with the program. Well, no, you got to trust the Lord to lead through your husband in proper time. And maybe it's something that he needs to learn, but it's certainly not right to have an attitude of he'll catch up to me eventually.
And vice versa. God can show the husband things through his wife.
Yep.
That has happened frequently with us. And a lot of the times there's been several things like with the house or with renting or the car where God has laid that on my heart that we really need to do this soon. We need to do this soon. And I end up getting all the information all lined up in advance, and I looked into it already. So then when you're like, hey, let's do this, I'm like, okay, here it all is.
Right. And there's a huge difference there too between nagging your husband and helping your husband. That's a huge help to me. There are things where she may bring something to me, she may want to do something, I say it's not time yet, and then
it's not like I'm secretly doing it behind his back.
Right. And then presenting later on, okay, we talk about it a little later, and hey, here's wanted to bring this up again. Here's a plan that could work. And she's still.
Have you thought about this?
Right. It's not nagging and pressure and making me miserable. That's the wrong way to do things.
Now it's more of just a conversation. Hey, I know we talked about this, but I really still want to do this. Can you pray about this again? I did this research here. I really think we could do it this way. And if you say no, I don't keep going.
Right. Yeah. So, and that you cannot expect in your marriage that if you talk about it once, you're never going to have to talk about it again. That's not just because she brings it up again isn't nagging.
Yeah.
But ladies, if you're bringing it up every third Tuesday and he said the same thing every time for the last 2 years and nothing's changed, then that's nagging. But there's a difference between, hey, I've got some new information. Can we talk about this?
Or even it's just been a while. We've done that one. It's been a while, and I'm still really feeling like we should do this, and we're gonna be sorry. That was the van. I really feel like we're gonna be sorry if we don't do this, and we're gonna be broken down on the side of the road. And then it got to the point where you were like, "Yeah, I don't really want you driving that without me."
Yeah, yeah. And so again, we're back to talking like mature adults.
Yeah.
So okay, now. I've got a few to finish up with, and we've got to wrap this up because we are running out of time. So I've got a few points. I think these are all mine, and I'm going to land the plane.
Okay.
So number 1, husbands, give clear leadership, and you need to mean what you say. Don't be ruled by your emotions. Don't be ruled by your wife's emotions. I was just reading today about David and his men, his army. They go out and they defeat the army of Absalom in this nasty civil war. David's men risk their lives to win the kingdom for David. And then instead of rejoicing in their victory, David disheartens them all by mourning for the death of his son so that they're sneaking back into the city because David did not rule over his emotions like a good king should have in that moment. He didn't say, okay, I will mourn my son at the appropriate time, but right now I'm going to show gratitude.
We're going to hop out for a little bit.
Okay. David should have said, okay, I have a duty as a king here. I'm not just going to be ruled by my emotions and dishearten all of my men who just risked their lives for me. So as a husband, number 1, your goal is to obey Christ, to pursue Christ, to lead your family after Christ, to walk humbly with your God. So when you're seeking to make decisions, your first priority is to please him. And then in pleasing Christ, you're wanting to love your wife and love your children. And so part of how you love your wife and your children is by using the authority God gave you to do them good, not to be selfish, not to be micromanaging, not to be tyrannical, but to do good to them. And so that does mean that sometimes you make decisions that your wife may not like or your kids may not like. You need to give clear leadership. Love your wife by giving clear leadership. That gives her security. It's not loving to your wife to not mean what you say, to be ambiguous, to maybe give the answer that you think she will like to hear because you want to avoid conflict and then 3 weeks later tell her, well, yeah, actually, I didn't mean that. Or to be secretly upset at her and she can feel this rift in your relationship and she doesn't know why. That's all manipulative garbage. Lovingly give clear leadership and say, sweetheart, this is what we need to do. We've had our conversation and I'm listening, I'm praying through your concerns, but this is the way we need to go. Maybe she'll like it. Maybe she won't. Ladies, don't make life miserable for your husband by every time he makes a decision you don't like, you have a meltdown, because that's going to make him very tempted to just want to say what you want to hear. Because he knows, well, if I say what she doesn't want to hear, she's going to be upset and we're going to have this huge fallout. He still must say what the Lord wants him to say. He still must be clear. But
you knowing that you actually are considering me helps tremendously.
yes. Yeah, and that's huge for the husband or for the wife. Yeah. The wife, husband, you will help your wife if she knows that you are actually loving her. You're actually listening to her rather than just she feels like, well, any concern she has, you just kind of blow on past it and do what you want. Well, she's still called to submit to her husband, but you're making it really hard. Ladies, if every time your husband makes a decision you don't like because he's trying to honor Jesus and make the right decision for your family, you freak out and have a meltdown, he's still required to follow Jesus, but you're making it really hard for him. So as we each fulfill our roles, we make it easier on the other to do what God told us to do. So husbands, give clear leadership, mean what you say, don't make promises you're not going to keep, don't give ambiguous or manipulative leadership, saying the thing that you think is going to make her happy instead of the thing that the Lord actually wanted you to say. You can't be ruled by her emotions. That's actually not loving your wife. If you are living to make her happy, you're not obeying Christ and you're not loving your wife. And you're actually not going to make her happy either. You're going to make her miserable too. So while you should absolutely want her to be happy and you should want to bless her and give to her wherever you can, absolutely. You should have a provident heart of, yeah, if I can say yes, I want to say yes. Not a miserly heart. But you do need to give clear leadership. You answer to Jesus first. And you pray for her and you speak it all lovingly and you communicate clearly and you want her to be happy. But if she's not, you're first called to please Christ. So that's number one. Give clear leadership. Mean what you say. Don't be ruled by her emotions. Be ruled by what Christ wants you to do. Love your wife and your family by doing good to them with the position that God has given you. Next, I've seen a meme going around about a man who says, well, I got to check with the wife. And the implication was that he is a soy boy, beta male, ruled by his wife sort of guy. And that can be true. I have to read this sign I saw today. A veteran, I saw this on a house. A veteran lives here with his commander in chief. No, that's gross. That's bad. Don't do that. If when you say I've got to check with my wife, you're meaning I got to ask the boss because if she doesn't like it, she's going to come down on me because I'm one of her kids. And then no, that is absolutely bad. That's ungodly. It's not biblical, and it's not a right picture of Christ. But if when you say you ask your wife, you're saying my wife she's my secretary. She's my Proverbs 31 homemaker. She runs a bunch of the schedule and finances. Let me check with her because I'm living with her in an understanding way. That's not being a beta male. That's being a Christ-like husband. So there's a very clear and easy distinction there that we have to make and we have to understand. For men to say, well, I need to check with my wife, it's a bad thing if you're submitted to her and you're just going to do whatever she wants. But it's a good thing if you're saying, I need to consider all the things she has going on, all the work she's doing to help me, the things that I've asked her to do. I need to consider those things. I'm going to love my wife by checking in with her before I reschedule the next weekend. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the royal way because I feel like this episode really got a lot into, which I mean, that's what our podcast is for, marriage, but so much about marriage and patriarchy and all that stuff. But when we're talking about finances, it's critical as Christians, all of us, male or female, that we walk in the royal way. I referred at the beginning of the podcast, we were talking about Brother Andrew's book, God's Smuggler. Highly recommend that read, just as a reminder of how well our God takes care of us. And Brother Andrew's phrase, the royal way, refers to the idea that we are ambassadors for the King of Glory. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He gave us his own son. How will he not also with him freely give us all things? That should be our attitude. When it comes to finances, we should be fearless. It doesn't mean we're foolish. It doesn't excuse us from being diligent or making wise plans. But it does mean that we can walk in the royal way and trust God. And so many of the things that stress us out in our finances are because we are afraid, we are anxious, and we're not walking in the royal way, resting in the fact that our Father, Matthew 6, feeds the birds. He's going to take care of us too. That really needs to be a financial foundation for your marriage. Hebrews 13, 5 and 6. Let your character be free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he himself has said, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you, so that we confidently say, the Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? And that right there will give peace to your marriage, to your finances in your marriage, because you recognize God's in control. My Father's going to provide. I will walk in the royal way. As a wife, I'm not going to stress out. I'm not going to freak out. I'm trusting the Lord to provide. I'm trusting my husband as he provides for the family. For the husband, I'm going to set an atmosphere in our home of not being worried about the work and the finances because I know the Lord's going to provide. Of course, this doesn't excuse us from being diligent or any of those things, but it should be a foundational Christian assumption that we recognize God is the one who builds the house. God is the one who pays the bills. God is the one who cares for his children. And so we, of all people, we should be the most at peace as we walk in the royal way and as we trust our Father to keep his promises. So
Amen.
I think that's about it. My lovely wife has stepped out because she is caring for our fifth child. But with that, we are going to wrap up episode 2 on finances. And let's see. Okay, yeah. So next week, we're going to talk about stereotypes. We're going to talk about some of the phrases that get thrown around or about marriage, like everybody fights, she's the boss, happy wife, happy life, all those things. If you have a phrase or a stereotype you'd like us to speak to, please comment on one of the social media platforms.
Were you going to make one?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do. And I actually want to make a post and ask for
what
people's
your top ones that you've heard.
Yeah, you're the ones you love or the ones you hate that we can address. That's
Good
next
ones and bad ones.
Yeah, that's next episode next week. And then at the week after that, we're going to talk about personal piety and individual walks with the Lord in a marriage. And then we're going to have 3 episodes on the marriage bed, 3 episodes on patriarchy, and then a concluding episode on having fun in a marriage and keeping things in proper perspective. So I hope that this was a blessing. Like it, share it, do all the things, and join me on Thursday for Where the Battle Runs Thick. We will see you next week. Awkward selection of outro video. Pause. All right. We'll see you next week.